This is page 2 of Great Uncle Dale's message to Ruby Jane. In October of 1941, the mother of your great-grandfather John, your great-aunt Jen, and Dale died of pneumonia. In December 7th of 1941, the Japanese Imperial Army and Navy pulled a sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, and the United States of America declared war on Japan and Germany. Your great-uncle John, I believe, was working in Iowa at that time, and I think about mid-1942, he enlisted in the Army Air Force. He became a navigator on a B-17 and served with a squadron in England. Dale was a senior in high school, and after he graduated from high school, he was given a farm deferment until the spring of 1944, when he enlisted in the Marine Corps. Now I'm going to show you another picture, and this is going to be of the same threesome that I showed you when we were children in Overley. Now we are adults. And you can see that your great-grandfather John L. Swingen is a lieutenant in the Army Air Force. Your sister Genevieve was a school teacher out in Chowchilla, California, and she rented a home where in the winter months our dad would spend his non-farming time. I had enlisted in the Marine Corps in the spring of 1944. Now this would have been in just before Christmas in 1945. The war was over in England, and so John's squadron returned to the United States, and the ship I was serving on, the USS Minneapolis in the South Pacific, returned to statewide for repair. We both came to Jen's home in Chowchilla, California, to spend the Christmas. We had a nice time and good home-cooked meals, of course, with Aunt Jen, and Dad was there. And then, I think a day before New Year's, Dad, John, and Dale traveled to a construction city near San Francisco, where Dad's sister and our Aunt Emma and her husband Melvin were living, as Melvin was working in construction in a shipyard. And now I'm going to show you a picture of Dad Swingen with his two sons, I'm sorry, who is a veteran of World War II. On New Year's Eve, while we were in San Francisco, John and I decided to go on Liberty in San Francisco. And one of the sites we decided to see first was an elegant hotel, and it must have been at least 30 stories high, and we knew that it had an elegant cafe and cocktail lounge on the top floor, and it was an observation points where you could take and look out over the city of San Francisco. Well, we knew we couldn't afford to dine up there or eat there, but we decided we'd go early and see if we couldn't just see some of the sights and pick out some landmarks in San Francisco that we might want to see. Well, on the way up to this dining room observation area, when the elevator stopped at the 3rd or 4th floor, your grandfather John became kind of excited and poked me in the ribs, and he called my attention to a gentleman that had just got on the elevator. Well, I gotta admit, I didn't know who it was, but John recognized him as Secretary of State Cordell Hull. And of course, at this time, there was negotiations going on, trying to settle the peace with Japan. So he must have been there during the Christmas season of 1945, conducting important business for the United States of America. Well, we did get to the top, and we did look out, and we soon found out that most of the people there, of course, had reservations, so we quickly left. But any account, we went to USO, and we danced with some girls, and we had some good times. Everybody on New Year's Eve got out and walked down Market Street, and that was a lot of fun. And of course, there was balloons and noise making. So that was pretty nice to be on Liberty with your big brother. And it was kind of unusual, of course, for an enlisted man to be on Liberty with a commissioned officer. But we both had our IDs in our pockets and figured if the MPs or the Shore Patrol stopped us, we would be able to explain to them that we were brothers, and so it wasn't out of military conduct for us to be doing this. Well, Ruby Jane, I want to tell you that your grandfather was a very generous man. Betty and I had bought maybe back in 1963 or 4, something like that, a small little trailer that we were using for a camper. It wasn't equipped with a refrigerator or much of a stove. It was just really a sleeping trailer. But we used, of course, not an ice box, but what do you call it, cooler for our food, and we had some nice camping trips. Well, John and Tiny also had a nice trailer that they pulled behind their car, but they decided that they no longer wanted to go camping. They had other interests. They had bought their place up in Vermont, and that was taking up their time, and they were coming to North Dakota to visit Dale and Betty, and I think maybe after that they were on their way to California to visit John and maybe Dad. I don't know, remember if Dad was in North Dakota or California at that time or not. But any account, they said that they would sell me their trailer. Well, I readily agreed on it, and to just make the sale that much more attractive to me, I know that they were at that time had a nice vineyard where they were raising wild grapes, and they were just delicious, and Tiny made the best pie. So they put some of those wild grapes in the refrigerator and brought it to Steele, North Dakota, and we switched the hitches and all this, took it off of John's car and put it on mine. And then when I went to settle with John, I asked him, well, what do you want for this trailer? Oh, he said, Dale, I don't want anything. The trailer is yours. Well, that was pretty darn generous and nice of him. And well, I said, well, John, I'm going to sell my little trailer, and so at least take the money I get from a trade-in. He said, no, Dale, whatever you get for that trailer, you put it in a college account for Peter and Paul. Well, how could I turn that down? Because I knew that it was going to be a big job for Betty and I to pay for college for Peter and Paul. So I sold the trailer. I think I only paid $300 for it in the first place. I think I sold it for $200. So that money was used, I know, by Peter and Paul. And then John and Tiny had, before those years, they had been very generous to us. They had at least maybe once or twice a year, we would receive a big box from Connecticut, and it was clothes that Johnny had outgrown. And of course, they were real nice shape. There were nice shirts and pants and suit coats and that our boys used and really liked. So that was pretty neat to have these additional clothes to dress our growing family. Ruby Jane, I want to tell you other things about your grandfather. One of the things that impressed me the most was his determination. He set goals for himself, and he did not give up. He stuck to the goals. I'm sure he decided that he wanted to be an officer in the United States Army Air Force. And after the war, when most of us took our discharge, he stayed in the reserves and actually was discharged as a colonel. So I'm very proud that my brother was a colonel in the Army Air Force. As a young man, I can remember that he loved athletics. Now, in the small town of Overley, we had a high school and we did participate in some sports like basketball and track. John participated in them all. He was so enthusiastic that the coaches loved him because his enthusiasm would rub off on the other players, and it was easier for the coaches to get them to do their job. And he brought the same enthusiasm when he went to college in Botano, North Dakota, in a school of forestry. And I believe that's when he started taking horticulture. And he joined the football team and he showed that same enthusiasm. And so the coaches loved to have him on the team. And so I think what your Uncle John, Ruby Jane, wants you to do, I said your Uncle John, well, I'm sorry. I meant to say your great-grandfather John wants you to do is to take and do your very best, have determinations, set goals and have determinations. He would want you to love God and your country, and he would want you to respect and love your parents and do your very best. I and my family, Ruby Jane, are very proud of you, and we welcome you, and we say to you and your family, God bless you. I hope you enjoy my little messages, and I'm looking forward to the day when we can meet. Goodbye, and our love to all.